She never made it to school. Her backpack was found by the river, and 5 days later, they pulled her little body from the water. You're watching an unbelievable true story, where we only tell real stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. This happened in Texas. February 2024. Her name was Audrii Cunningham, 11 years old. She wasn't taken by a stranger. No mask, no dark alley. It was a man her family knew, a neighbor, someone she trusted. That morning, she was supposed to ride to school, but she never showed up. Instead, she vanished. And while her family searched while police knocked on doors, he was already covering his tracks. Here's the part that chills me. 80% of abuse and abduction cases involve someone the victim already knows. And every 40 seconds, a child is abducted in the U.S. Think about that. While you blink, another family's life changes forever. That's why we linked a family safety course in the description and pinned comment. It teaches kids and parents how to spot danger early, what to do if something feels wrong, and how to escape, even when the threat comes from someone close. Now stay with me, because we're about to break down who took Audrii, how the police tracked him down, and the one mistake that finally exposed the killer. Let's get into the full story. They pulled her from the river. That little body, lifeless. The whole town stood still when they heard. This is the story of Audrii Cunningham, 11 years old, Texas, February 2024. And let me say it clear right now. This story is based on real events reported by police and news sources. Now picture this. Cold water. A child's pink backpack lying by the Trinity River dam. Her family screaming her name, but no answer. And then, 5 days later, divers bring her up. That was the moment every parent fears. The moment your heart just cracks open and don't ever close again. See, Audrii wasn't just some headline. She was a little girl. She had dreams. She loved animals. She liked playing with friends, drawing, watching cartoons like any kid. She was the type of child that smiled easy even when the world wasn't kind. She had a whole life in front of her. But in one morning, it was gone. Now let me take you back. It was February 15th, 2024. Livingston, Texas. A small place. Trees everywhere. The kind of town where people wave at you when you drive past. Country roads. Neighbors who think they know each other. The morning was cool, crisp, a little cloudy. Kids are getting ready for school. Parents are sipping coffee, rushing out the door. Just another Thursday. For Audrii, it started like any other. She lived with her dad. She was supposed to head off to school. She wore a backpack, tied her shoes, maybe thought about what was for lunch that day, maybe thought about who she'd sit with in the cafeteria. 11 years old. You don't think about death, about evil. You just think about cartoons, friends, and homework you didn't finish. But here's the part that kills me. She didn't even get the chance to make it to the school doors. She was last seen leaving her home that morning. And then, nothing. Gone. By the time the school called, saying she never showed up, panic already set in. Now, you ever lose a kid in a grocery store for 2 minutes? Your stomach drops, your brain goes blank. You start calling their name louder and louder. Now, imagine that. Except the minutes turn to hours, and the hours turn to days. That's what her family went through. Police came in fast. They brought dogs, drones, helicopters. Volunteers showed up. The whole community out there searching. Every trail, every ditch, every part of that river. People praying, people crying, people hoping maybe she was just lost in the woods. But the truth was darker. And let me tell you, this wasn't some masked man hiding in the bushes. This wasn't some stranger danger story. This was worse. Because the man who took Audrii, he wasn't a stranger at all. He was somebody the family knew. A neighbor. A man who had eaten at their table. A man they trusted. His name was Don Stephen McDougal, 42 years old. And this ain't no made-up villain. This is a real man living right there by the family. And he had a record. Kidnapping. Assault. The kind of record where you say, how the hell was this man even walking free? But there he was, smiling, pretending, waiting. And on that morning, he was the one who lured Audrii away. Now pause right there. Let me hit you with something real. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the U.S., a child goes missing every 40 seconds. NCMEC 2023. That means while you're watching this, While I'm talking right now, another kid's gone. Not from a stranger, most times. From somebody they know. And that's what makes this case cut deep. Audrii knew this man, trusted him, and that's how he got close enough to take her life. The town went on edge. Cops set up roadblocks. News vans parked on corners. Helicopters circled overhead. And then they found it, her pink backpack, sitting out there like a ghost near the river. No child, just the bag. And parents everywhere held their kids tighter that night, because it could have been anybody's daughter. 5 long days later, February 20th, 2024, the search ended. Divers went into the Trinity River near the dam. They pulled her out, cold, still. And when that news hit, grown men cried in the street. Volunteers who had walked miles dropped to their knees. The whole town felt it. Now here's what eats at me. When people talk about these cases, they forget the kid was human. They say a body was found, like it was just a bag of bones. No, that was Audrii. She had a laugh. She had favorite songs. She had people that loved her. She was not just a body. She was somebody. And the man who took her, he thought he could get away with it. He thought he could hide behind lies. But police had eyes on him from the start. He was the last one seen with her. He had scratches. He had a record. And now, he had nowhere to run. That's where I'll stop for now, because we're about to go deeper into who McDougal really was. How he fooled people, and the exact moment police trapped him. But remember this. That morning, Audrii tied her shoes, put on her backpack, ready for school. And she never made it back home. You know what makes this story sick? The man who killed Audrii, Don Stephen McDougal, he wasn't some shadowy monster in the woods. He was right there, a neighbor. He was supposed to drive her to school sometimes. Think about that. The family trusted him enough to let him take their little girl. That's what evil looks like sometimes. It smiles at you, helps carry your groceries, waves when you walk past, and then, when you least expect it, it takes everything from you. Now, who is this man? McDougal, 42 years old, Livingston, Texas. He had a history, and not the kind of history you overlook. Back in 2008, he was convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Before that, he had charges for kidnapping. People knew his name. Police knew his name. He wasn't new to trouble. So you ask, how does a man like that end up free, living next door to kids? That's the broken part of this system. A man proven dangerous, still walking around. And here's the worst part. He was friends with Audrii's dad. He'd been around the family. He wasn't some unknown face. He was Mr. Don, the guy you wave at, the guy you don't think twice about. But on the morning of February 15th, he had other plans. Instead of taking Audrii to school like a normal day, he lured her away. Nobody knew where. Nobody saw the exact moment. But police say he took her life that very day. And for 5 long days, he walked around free while everybody else searched for her. Think about that. Parents crying, volunteers walking through the woods, helicopters in the air, and the man who did it, sitting right there, acting like nothing happened. That's what makes me angry. Because when a child goes missing, every second counts. Every hour the truth is hidden is another hour of hope slipping away. The search was massive. You had Texas Rangers, state troopers, FBI agents. They all came down to Livingston. The town turned into a base camp. Trucks lined up, people dropping off food and water for the search teams. Everybody wanted to find that little girl. And still, McDougal played it cool. He even gave interviews like he cared. But you can't hide guilt forever. Police were watching him close. They knew his past. They knew his lies didn't add up. One neighbor said they saw his car by the river. Another said he acted nervous. Police started connecting the dots. Then came the big find, her backpack. It was pink, sitting there near the Trinity River. Her stuff still inside. No child in sight. When parents heard that, it cut deep. Because a backpack means she didn't just wander off. It means someone stopped her. Someone took her. The pressure on McDougal grew heavy. He couldn't hide forever. And finally, police made their move. On February 16th, just a day after she went missing, they arrested him. Not yet for murder. First for lying, for messing with evidence, for not cooperating. But they had him. And once they had him, they weren't letting go. Now let's stop here, because you gotta understand the picture of this town. Livingston, Texas. It ain't New York City. It ain't Los Angeles. It's It's small. Everybody knows everybody. It's the kind of place where you think your kids can walk to school safe. You think neighbors got your back. That's what makes this case so scary. Because evil wasn't some stranger in the shadows. Evil was standing right in the daylight. And here's the thing. Most of us, we don't prepare for that. We don't think the guy smiling at us could be planning harm. But let me drop this truth. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 80% of child abduction cases, the victim knew the offender, DOJ 2020. That means it's usually not a stranger. It's family, friends, neighbors, people you'd never expect. That's why cases like Audrii Cunningham hit home. Because if it could happen in Livingston, Texas, it could happen anywhere. Now back to McDougal. Police pulled his phone records, tracked his car, followed his every move from that morning. And you know what? All the trails led to the same place, the river. That river became the center of everything. They searched it day and night. Dogs sniffing along the banks. Divers going under the dark water. And for 5 long days, the family waited. Hoped. Prayed. Her dad said he kept thinking maybe she'd walk back in the door. Maybe she'd been hiding. Maybe she'd been scared and ran off. Parents will believe anything just to avoid the truth. But on February 20th, the waiting ended. Divers found her in the Trinity River near the dam. And the screams that came out that day, they were heard across the whole town. Now the case was no longer a missing child. It was a murder. And McDougal was no longer just a suspect. He was the man, the killer. The DA came forward quick, said they'd seek the death penalty. Because this wasn't just a crime. This was a betrayal of trust, of community, of innocence. But before I go deeper into the arrest and the trial, let me stop here and say something real. If you're a parent, you know the fear. If you're a kid, you felt that moment when something don't feel right. That's why we added a family safety course in the description and pin comment. It's not about fear. It's about being ready. It teaches kids and parents what to do if something feels wrong, how to escape, how to speak up. Because most danger, like in this case, comes from people we already know. And if one family learns how to stop it early, then maybe another child doesn't end up in a river. When police finally sat Don Stephen McDougal down, he thought he could talk his way out. He thought he was slick. But lies? They only stretch so far. At first, he said he didn't know where Audrii Cunningham was. Said he didn't see her that morning. Tried to act like he was just another neighbor, worried like everyone else. But cops ain't stupid. They already had his phone records. They already had witnesses. One neighbor saw his car parked near the river. Another saw him walking alone, nervous. And his phone? It pinged near the Trinity River that same morning she vanished. When they told him that, he started shifting in his chair. His story kept changing. First, he said maybe she went missing on her own. Then he said maybe somebody else picked her up. Every time he opened his mouth, he dug himself deeper. See, the thing about guilt? You can smell it. And detectives in that room, they smelled it all over him. Now, let me take you inside what the police were piecing together. February 15th, morning. Audrii Cunningham was supposed to walk out the door and ride with McDougal to school. That's what had happened before. It wasn't strange. It wasn't scary. She trusted him. But this time, he didn't take her to school. He took her toward the Trinity River. Somewhere along the way, he killed her. And instead of calling for help, instead of bringing her back, he dumped her in that water like she was trash. That's what he thought. But she wasn't trash. She was a child. She was loved. Now, while cops pressed him, the town was breaking apart. People were angry. Some wanted him dead before the trial. Others were in shock. How could someone so close, someone they saw every day, do this? One woman said, "I used to wave at him every morning. Now I feel sick just thinking about it." Another said, "He was at the store last week, laughing like nothing was wrong." And that's the terrifying truth. You never really know who somebody is. You see what they show you. And evil don't always look like evil. Sometimes it looks like the neighbor across the street. Back in the interview room, police had something else on him. Security cameras. One camera caught his car near the dam. Another caught movements that didn't match his story. And then came the scratches. When detectives saw his hands and arms, they noticed marks. Scratches like somebody fought back. Now, who would he be fighting with that morning? An 11-year-old girl trying to save her own life. That was the nail in his coffin. But even with all that, McDougal didn't confess. He kept dodging, weaving, stalling. But you don't need a confession when the evidence piles this high. Meanwhile, Audrii's family. Lord, her dad was broken. Her mom too. They kept asking why. Why her? Why him? Why that morning? Questions that don't ever get answers. And the whole town, Livingston, felt heavy. Every parent started walking their kids to school. Doors locked earlier. Trust disappeared overnight. Because if this could happen to Audrii, it could happen to anyone. And here's where I gotta stop and say something hard. This ain't just one story. This is part of a bigger pattern. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, in 80% of cases where children are harmed, it's done by someone the child already knows. DOJ 2020. Not strangers. Not monsters in the night. People we let in. That's why this case hurts so much. Audrii wasn't fooled by a stranger. She trusted somebody she should have been safe with. Now, let me take you back to the search. 4 or 5 days, hundreds of people walked those woods, prayed at that river, held flashlights in the night. Some folks barely slept. They carried Audrii's picture, calling her name, hoping maybe she was hiding, scared. And the whole time, McDougal sat there pretending to care, pretending to help, while he knew exactly where she was. That kind of evil, it ain't just murder. It's cruelty. It's spitting on hope. On February 20th, when divers brought her out of the water, everything stopped. Reporters cried. Police cried. Even strangers cried. Because it wasn't just the end of a search. It was the end of innocence in that town. McDougal was charged with capital murder of a person under 10. And in Texas, that means one thing. The death penalty is on the table. The DA said they'd go for it. They said this crime demanded it. And I'll be honest, some people said death was too easy for him. They wanted him to sit in a cell forever, thinking about what he did. Others said he didn't deserve another breath. Me? I just keep thinking about Audrii. Because no punishment, no trial, no sentence brings her back. Now here's the part that'll stick with you. While he sat in jail, McDougal still didn't show remorse. Didn't cry. Didn't beg forgiveness. He sat cold, like he didn't care. Like an 11-year-old's life meant nothing to him. And that's when the world got to see his face. Mugshot on TV. Dead eyes. People said, that's the face of a killer. But I'll tell you the truth. Evil don't always look scary. Sometimes it looks normal. And that's what makes it dangerous. When they brought Don Stephen McDougal into that courtroom, the air changed. People turned their heads. Some stared at him with hate. Others couldn't even look. He shuffled in with chains on his wrists and ankles. That sound, the clink of chains, was the only good sound he ever made. The judge read the charges. Capital murder of a child under 10. Everybody in that room knew what that meant. Death penalty on the table. But this wasn't just about law. This was about a little girl who should have been sitting in a classroom, not lying in a coffin. Audrii's family filled the benches. Her dad, her mom, relatives, friends. Some held tissues, some clenched fists. Her dad kept his head down, like looking up was too much. Her mom wiped her face over and over, tears coming no matter how hard she fought them. And when the prosecutor described what happened, how McDougal lured Audrii, how he killed her, how he dumped her in that river, people in the courtroom broke. You could hear crying, sniffles, whispers of, "Lord, help us." The DA stood tall, said plain, "This man took the life of an innocent 11-year-old girl. He betrayed the trust of her family and this community. We will seek the ultimate punishment." Some nodded. Some whispered amen. Because in Texas, folks believe if you take a child's life, you pay with your own. Now, the defense, they tried to talk about mental health. Try to say he didn't mean it. But nobody wanted to hear excuses. Not when a pink backpack had been pulled from the river. Not when a child's body had been laid to rest. See, this case wasn't just about facts. It was about betrayal. Because remember, McDougal wasn't a stranger. He was someone the family knew, trusted, let into their life. And betrayal like that, it burns hotter than fire. The trial prep dragged on for months. Lawyers filed motions. Reporters kept showing up. The courthouse steps turned into a place for people to pray, light candles, hold signs with Audrii's picture. One sign said, "Justice for Audrii. Protect our children." Another, "Never again. Watch who you trust." And let me tell you, that second one, That's the hardest lesson here. Because in small towns, people don't want to believe their neighbor could be a monster. But monsters don't live in caves. They live next door. The community refused to let Audrii's name fade. They held vigils. Balloons lifted in the sky. Purple ribbons tied on mailboxes, fences, storefronts. Purple was her favorite color. And everywhere you went in Livingston, you saw it. Her friend from school drew pictures, wrote letters. One note said, "I miss you, Audrii. I wish we could play again." Another said, "I'll never forget you." That's the part that guts me. Because kids shouldn't have to write goodbye letters to other kids. But out of the pain came power. The town stood up. Parents started demanding answers. Why was a man with a violent record free? Why did nobody stop him before this happened? And those questions still echo. Now, let's step back for a moment. Because this isn't just about Livingston, Texas. It's about everywhere. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the U.S., one child goes missing every 40 seconds. NCMEC 2023. That's not just numbers. That's thousands of families living the same nightmare. And most of those kids, they're taken by somebody they know. Somebody who already earned their trust. That's why in the description and pinned comment, we added a family safety course. Not to scare you, to prepare you. It shows kids and parents how to spot danger early, what to do if something feels wrong, and how to fight back if they have to. Because waiting until it happens is too late. Now back to the trial. Every time McDougal walked into that courtroom, people stared holes through him. Some whispered prayers. Others whispered curses. And he sat there stone-faced, cold, like nothing about a dead little girl touched him. But for the family, every hearing was torture. Her dad had to sit there and hear details no parent should hear. Her mom had to listen to strangers talk about her daughter like evidence. One reporter said the mom whispered, "That's my baby," under her breath, over and over, like she was trying to remind the room that Audrii wasn't just a case. She was a child. And that's the thing that courts can't capture. They can sentence a man. They can read laws. But they can't ever put back the hole left in a parent's heart. The trial hasn't ended yet. But the family waits. The community waits. And everyone knows, whatever the verdict, nothing brings Audrii back. But her story? It's not over. Because people in Livingston swore they'd never forget her. They swore her name would be said. They swore her face would be remembered. And as long as people keep telling her story, maybe another child is saved. Maybe another parent sees the warning signs. Maybe another neighbor speaks up before it's too late. After the funeral, after the headlines slowed down, that's when it hit the hardest. Because the world moved on, but her family didn't. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Her bed still made. Her shoes still by the door. Her schoolwork half done on the table. Her laughter gone. That's what people don't see. Everybody talks about the crime, the monster, the trial. But the hardest part? The silence that follows. Her mom said sometimes she'd wake up and forget, just for a second. Think maybe Audrii was in the other room watching cartoons. Then the truth would slam her in the chest all over again. Her dad? He carried it different. Kept his head down. Spoke less. But you could see the weight on his back, like he was dragging the whole world behind him. Her little friends at school, they made a memorial garden, planted flowers, painted rocks with her name. One rock said, "Fly high, Audrii." Another, "We love you forever." See, kids know how to grieve too. They just do it in colors and drawings instead of words. But out of that pain, something powerful started to grow. The town got loud. Parents started demanding changes. Meetings at the courthouse. Folks writing to lawmakers. Why was he out? Why wasn't he watched? How many more children before y'all wake up? And that fire? That's Audrii's legacy. Her story didn't just break hearts. It lit a fuse. The sheriff's office started new talks about tracking violent offenders more closely. The community started self-defense workshops for kids. Local churches started safe ride programs so kids weren't left walking alone. And her family? They turned their grief into a mission. They said, if we couldn't save our baby, maybe we can save someone else's. They launched the Audrii Cunningham Foundation. Its focus, protecting children, teaching parents, funding search efforts for missing kids. Her face became a banner, not just of loss, but of hope, too. And that right there is strength. Because not everybody can take pain that deep and turn it into power. Now let me be real with you for a second. This ain't just about one evil man. This is about a system that lets men like him keep walking free. This is about trust that gets broken in places that should feel safe. This is about every parent's worst nightmare and how fast it can come true. Remember this. Monsters don't hide under the bed. They knock on your door. They offer rides. They smile at your kids. They come wrapped in trust. And that's why we tell these stories. Not to scare you, to wake you up. Because the truth is, this can happen anywhere. It's not about Livingston, Texas. It's about every neighborhood in America, yours included. So, let me talk to the parents for a second. Don't ever feel guilty for asking too many questions. Don't ever feel bad for saying no to someone giving your child a ride. Don't ever think it couldn't happen here. Because it could. It did. And if Audrii's story does anything, I hope it reminds us to protect our babies like our lives depend on it. Because in a way, they do. Now, back in Livingston, they keep her memory alive. Every year, they release purple balloons in her honor. Every year, they speak her name. Every year, they remind the world she was here. And that's the thing about Audrii. She was more than a victim. She was a little girl who loved cartoons, who liked purple, who trusted people she shouldn't have had to fear. She was sunshine in sneakers. And though her life was stolen, her story lives. In her family, in her town, and now in you. Because you heard it. You felt it. And maybe tonight, when you tuck your kids in, you'll hold them a little tighter. Maybe tomorrow, you'll double check who's around them. Maybe one day, that extra ounce of caution saves a life. That's how Audrii wins. Not through punishment in a courtroom, but through protection in every home. So let's end with this. Say her name. Remember her face. Carry her story. Because monsters like McDougal, they want silence. But we don't give them that. We give the child the last word. And Audrii's word is love. Even in death, her story pushes us to love harder, protect stronger, and never look away. Girl medium skin tone, Audrii Cunningham, 2012 to 2024. A little girl who should still be here. A name we won't forget.